Subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell icon for the latest film interviews, features, and recommendations on the movies that matter.
Chunky Panday, it's good to see you. How are you, Chunky? How are you doing?
All good, surviving in the lockdown like everyone else. But it's been tough. I mean, these past 5 months have not been that easy. Obviously, I've had a family support and, we've all been together. But, just staying in, not being able to meet people, not working has been very taxing on the mind. So I always try to keep myself happy and, occupied trying to do something.
Right. Chunky, it feels like suddenly you're working a lot more than you had been previously. There was, of course, a patch in the middle where one only saw you sort of in paparazzi pictures at parties. But now one is seeing a lot more of you on screen. You were in Jawani Janeman earlier this year. Last year, you were in Saho, you were in Prasthanam. In both those films, you played the villain. I also remember that you were in Begum Jaan a few years ago. So, and of course, you were in Houseful 4 doing the comedy routine. I want to ask you, do you feel like you have rediscovered acting, or is it like the industry remembers that this guy's still around?
I think the industry still remembers this guy is around. In fact, I'm seeing so much of it happening now. Okay, you spoke about me, but right now, going onto the OTT platform and seeing all these people performing, these actors, suddenly you realize there's so many hidden gems in our industry, who haven't been discovered till now. But yeah, I had a very good streak in the past 4-5 years, especially last year. I think in the last 6 months, I had 4 major releases in the theaters. So it was almost like a Chunky Panday festival, and touch wood, all the films did quite well. So it's been exciting, and what's been more exciting is comedy was something I always loved, and I'm so glad people accepted me as the Pasta and the Nepali characters and all the characters I've been bestowed with. But the villain parts, which I slowly started getting, and that started working for me, is really got me excited. Because Rajeev, since a kid, whenever I went and saw movies, I always wanted the villain to win. I always wanted the Joker to beat up Batman. I always wanted Gabbar Singh to win in Sholay. I don't know why. It's a very dark streak in me. And it's finally, I guess, coming out on screen.
It's as if you're sort of modeling your career after your 80s heroes, Shakti Kapoor and Kader Khan, who also kind of balanced that whole, doing comedy sometimes and being the bad guy sometimes.
Oh, they were perfect. I would say Shakti Kapoor, Kader Khan Saab, Anupam Kher.
That's
mean, the 3 of these, the ease which they did comedy, they were equally menacing as villains. So even if I can do 10% of what they've done, I think I would have achieved a lot in my career. These guys are like legends, greats, and I actually started my career with them. So somewhere down the line, they are inspirations for me.
Chunky, the most recent gig, of course, is the 2nd season of Abhay, which just dropped on Z5. And in that, you play a very unlikely villain because you play an ordinary Joe by day. He's someone who's this nondescript fellow. He's got a bit of a paunch, he's got a side parting, he's a family man, and then he becomes something else. He really transforms into something quite horrific. Apparently, you modeled this character after a teacher of yours in school.
Yes. So, in school, I think it was my junior school. I had this teacher who was very mild, very timid, had a slight limp in his walk. The kids would tease him and he was very sweet. You felt bad, but you had to tease him. He was so sweet. But when he lost his temper, he would go crazy. And that time it was very normal to hit children with rulers and canes, and he'd beat the shit out of us. So as a kid, I used to think that maybe this guy is a murderer. He goes home and murders children. So he always stayed in my mind. And when I got offered this character, the teacher came to my mind. So actually, the look is exactly like my teacher. The oily hair, the parting, the glasses, the clothes. So yeah, I guess I borrowed it from him. And I guess performances are always about borrowing. You always get inspired by someone, and you land up doing something like Pasta.
Right.
Pasta was largely inspired by Sujit Kumar from The Great Gambler, where he played an Indian-Italian agent called Marco. So, yeah. Well, Aakhri Pasta is actually Aakhri Rasta of Amitabh Bachchan.
Correct.
So I think it's always good to go back into history and, take a leaf from the old book, I would say, and, try to improvise on it. Because I've seen down the years, whenever you even package old wine in new bottles, it normally works because, stories are stories, and there's so many ways you can tell them in. So whenever I get stuck somewhere or something, I just go back into the past and I see how was this situation handled. And normally you come out plus with that.
Are bad guys more fun to play, Chunky?
For me, they are for sure. I'm actually enjoying it. I'm finding it. I'm so much at ease playing the bad character. It's a little scary for me. But with a bad character, you need the director to love you. It's very important. You know, the
Correct.
director should love that character because, you know, then he concentrates a little more on the villain because otherwise he's always in love with the hero of the film.
Correct.
But if he loves this villainous character, then you're set.
When you started out working, what was the career that you had envisioned? And has your career played out in the way that you had hoped?
Not at all. Not at all. We all grew up watching Amitabh Bachchan films.
Correct.
And we all wanted to be like Amitabh Bachchan. Everyone, the whole of India the whole world wanted to be Amitabh Bachchan. But 87, when I arrived, when I finally got my film and it released in 87, obviously I'd been trying very hard for 3 years. I'd auditioned for television shows. I'd even auditioned for video cassette shows, like Haiba was making video films. Uh, I had a lot of rejections, and then finally I got my first film. And it released, and on Monday it was declared a super duper hit. It went on to do a golden jubilee.
This is
And I did,
Aaghi.
that was Aaghi. And then I remember that Monday, the film released. You know, there were a lot of films that were under production of mine, like 3, 4 I had already signed. But that Monday, when the film got declared a hit, suddenly in that week itself, I signed 20 movies. And I was so excited. There was no planning. It was like, ane do, paisa ane do. You know, I was not thinking anything. And I guess I just went through my life, enjoying it, working hard. But you don't enjoy success that much because you actually get very, very, very busy, when it comes. But it was a very unplanned career. And of course, I did make a few wrong choices. I made some right choices. Right after Aagi Aag, I had Paap Ki Duniya with Sunny Deol, again a blockbuster hit. And then came Khatron Ke Khiladi, which was again a hit. Then came Tezaab, which was, you could call it the Bahubali of its time.
Correct.
And then came films like, there were many films that came, Mitti Sona, Ghar Ka Chirag. But I was always in multi-starers. They were like solo hero. The solo hero films were like, I would say, Mitti or Sona or Khilaf with Madhuri Dixit, which were very average fares. The multi-starers really, really did well. 93 was the biggest blockbuster of my career, Aankhen. 1 year before that was Vishwatma. And then 94, 95, I had like a film with NN Sippy and, a couple of other films. But then suddenly my work dried up.
Right.
I was wondering why it happened. I mean, was I not performing well? But then I realized that the multi-starrer films which I was doing, those had dried up. People had started doing solo hero films. So, the second hero's role kind of started disappearing. And I started getting offered like, hey, bhai ka role kar de, papa ka role kar de. I mean, I don't mind doing bhai ka role or papa ka role, but it's got to be a good role,
Correct.
That's not with substance. So that's when I went away to Bangladesh. And I actually stayed there for 5, 6 years, did movies there, and they did quite well. I really didn't want to come back because I was having a great run out there. But when I got married
What
in
was that like, Chunky? What was that like? I mean, moving away to another industry, I'm guessing, learning a new language, learning a new style of working. What was that whole experience like?
It's, a lot of people do it here. I mean, people migrate to the Telugu industry, the Tamil industry, and it's like any other film industry. It's like what our Hindi films used to be in the Bachchan era,
Correct.
And they make the real action masala films. And those were films I grew up loving. So I was very, very comfortable working out there. They loved me a lot. They gave me a lot of respect because I was from Bollywood and I didn't speak the language at all. So in the first few films, I had a tough time speaking Bengali, but then finally they're very sweet. They told me, speak in Hindi, we'll dub it later. So the run was very nice. And every time I went there, I put on like 5 kilos and came back because I loved the food. And Bengalis can really keep feeding you, especially the Bangladeshis.
Right.
So yeah, I had a great time, but got married in 98. Then my wife Bhavna told me, it's time you come back because you're known because of Bollywood.
Yeah.
Why are you making people you have almost forgotten you? You better come and make your presence felt. So I came back, and then the process was literally that I had to start now getting work. So I started going like the old days to, producers' offices, meeting them, having coffee with them, trying to convince them like, I'm back, I'm going nowhere, please cast me. And finally, I think Harry Baweja cast me in Kayama. And then I got a few more films, and then I got Subhash Guy's Apna Sapna Mani Mani, and then of course came Houseful. So
Correct.
yeah, so it's been a slow process coming back, and I was very sure that I'm not going to be playing second hero or third hero or fourth hero. I'm going to be playing characters,
Mm.
and I really wanted to play those characters that could reach out to people's, the little child in them. So I started
Correct.
taking these quirky comedy roles and putting my own thing to it. I was lucky I got that kind of work, and it worked, and it got accepted. So yeah, that was the process of coming back.
I want to go back a little bit in time. I feel like this generation, of course, of viewers, of the audience, sort of largely knows you as Aakhri Pasta, but they don't, a lot of them haven't watched the earlier films. I want to ask you about Tezaab, which really was the breakout hit. Because of course you started out, of course, with Aghiyad, but it was Tezaab that became that big blockbuster that changed so many things. You were Babban, of course, Munna's best friend, and you had that beautiful song "So Gaya Ye Jahan," which became Nitin Mukesh's big musical chartbuster. Do you have memories of shooting that film?
Yes, Tezaab will always be very, very special to me because I had actually, before I got my first film, I had auditioned for N. Chandra for Pratighat,
Right.
for the inspector's role in Pratighat, and I had real long hair, and I went to Rajshri office uh, at Kettle Road and auditioned for it. And N. Chandra told me, you're a good-looking boy, great personality, but you don't suit this role. But one day I'll come back to you for another role. And good enough, 2 years later, when he started making Tezaab, he thought of me, and he said, listen, it's not a very big role. There's just 3 to 4 scenes. So I said, okay, narrate me one scene. He said, I'll narrate you your introduction. And he actually narrated that introduction in the restaurant.
In the
I
Irani
couldn't stop
cafe,
laughing.
yes.
And, while narrating it, he kept going like, talking to me like this. And then I realized, and he told me this also, that he had actually done it to someone himself. So that was his incident in life.
Correct.
I said, listen, don't narrate me anything more. I'm doing the film. That time I was just supposed to be there in it was like a guest appearance. But slowly while shooting it, just the role kept increasing. And he finally gave me a song and he says, the song is very slow. The distributors, or there were a lot of people forcing him to cut that song from the film because the film had become very long. Because it had almost become a 4 to 5 hour film. So they felt the song was very slow. But he kept telling people, I'll cut anything but this song from the film because otherwise you'll get a headache seeing my film. I need to mellow people down and calm people down. And he used to always tell me, like, right now, Ek Do Teen is the rage of the nation. 20 years down the line, they will still remember your song. So I'm lucky people still remember that song. Of course, Ek Do Teen is my favorite from the film.
But is it
In
true
fact,
that that
the,
that
male, the male version of Ek Do Teen, which was shot on Anil Kapoor, I was supposed to be in that too. But I didn't have dates, so I guess they shot it without me.
But is it true that that role of Babban was originally written for Govinda?
So I believe this is what I was told. My secretary Hasmukh, who's no more, had told me that originally they wanted to cast him for the film, but he had got extremely busy. Obviously, he was the biggest star on the scene at that time, and still is. I feel he's the finest actor in the country. So yes, but that was something very common that happened in those days. I mean, there were films he could. I actually got my first film because of him, because Pelaj Nilani had already done Ilzam with him, which was a blockbuster. And Govinda got too busy to give him dates, so he decided to take a new person. But that's how the film industry works. Sometimes you get busy and someone takes your role, and sometimes they get busy and you get their role. So because it's a very small fraternity, the limited actors, the sellable ones, the top
Correct.
10 or 10, 20. So these permutation combinations happen all the time, but it's healthy competition. It's fun.
Right. I also want to talk to you about Aankhen, which was such a big blockbuster when it came out. Of course, in that film, Govinda and you played Munnu and Bunnu, the two brothers, of course. And that was this massive blockbuster. Now, I read somewhere that David Dhawan wanted to make that film, or decided to make that film, after he heard that Rajkumar Santoshi was making another two-hero comedy called Andaz Apna Apna. Is that true?
No, it was not David's idea. It was Pelaj Nilani's idea. So I remember Pelaji, one Sunday he called us to his house and he just said, this is my concept. This is the film I want to do. There was David, me, Govinda, Anis Bazmi. And he says, I just want to make this film within 6 months. So we all asked him, why 6 months? I mean, that time films took minimum 2 years to make.
Correct.
So he said, no, I feel there's a very similar film coming, and I think we need to come before them.
Right.
So we said, which film? So he said, no, there's this Salman Amir film called Andaz Apna Apna, which is Rajkumar Santoshi is making. And I feel our subject will be very similar. So let's try to come before them. It was just a kind of a thing where, you just want the uh, first foot through the door, basically.
Right.
And he actually decided to shoot it in 6 months and did it in 6 months. So I remember originally we had Anupam Kherji playing Kader Khan Saab's role. Anupam ji didn't have dates, so they replaced him. Then the girls were supposed to be big heroines at that time. They didn't have, no one had dates, so he took rank new girls in it.
Right.
And the film was actually completed in those 6 months and released. So I guess, when you have, if there's a will, there's a way. And when you're destined, I always believe there's a time for a film to come out.
Correct.
Some films come ahead of their time and some films release just at the right time. Maybe the nation wanted an Aankhen at that time. Maybe he knew it and he got the product out at that time. So I guess that's what filmmaking is about.
Yeah.
Because
Chunky,
I can tell you numerous films that released then, or even like last year, if they release this year, they may not do that well because the nation is thinking different. The audience is thinking different. So, because 400 people working on a film at the same time can't go so wrong that a film tanks. It's just that the audience rejects it because they don't want to see it.
Right. Finally, Chunky, I mean, when you're on the street, what do you find that most people, I mean, what's the film or what's the character that most people end up talking to you about? I mean, what's the one that they mostly recognize you from? Is it Aakhri Pasta usually?
So the younger people is always Aakhri Pasta. Mamma mia. It's like,
I'm a joking, yeah.
And then as soon as the age goes a little higher, then it's like there's another character which I did, a film called Vishwatma.
Right.
Where I played this character. And there's a song.
Samandar, of course.
Yeah. So that character, Akash Bharadwaj, he was famous. And then, of course, Baban is all time. I mean,
correct.
I can meet someone my age and they'll always remember Baban. So, yeah. So I'm very grateful to have these characters because these characters live forever.
Correct. They do actually. And for some, and for people like us who've grown up on these films, I mean, it's great to sort of, revisit those memories and revisit those characters because, I mean, we grew up on them. All the best, Chunky. Thank you. It's nice to see you working. I hope you continue to work a lot more and to mix up the choices. Villain sometime, comedian sometime. You've brought a lot of laughter in our lives. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing lots more, Chunky.
Thank you, Rajeev, and please watch Abhay too and let me know.
Abhay too it's streaming now on Z5. I will take a look at it. I'm definitely going to look. I'm looking forward to watching it. Thank you, Chunky.
So nice talking.
Thank you.